Rolling solo.
Oh, yeah. Concerned about the future for Arkansas Florida being so far away. I'm Bria Ross, Arkansas News Service. Find our trust indicators at publicnewsservice.org. Support for KABF 88.3 FM comes from listeners and community partners. If you are business owner,
That sounds like me.
how it can be announced on KABF, contact our office at 501-332-6119. That's 501-332-6119.
Hey, my name is Anderson, Young Democrat Associates. The search to be a more livable and dignified city. We are currently facing a housing crisis, and after 3 years of organizing for renters, we've finally gotten the city to recognize housing as an emergency. This is only the first step. If we want Little Rock to live in dignity, then we are going to need a coalition of all the nonprofits and organizations that hold this city up. That's why on April 18th from 12 to 4 p.m., the Young Democratic Socialists of America at UALR will bring together community members and organizations to share information and discuss housing concerns and community engagement in Little Rock. Participants will have an opportunity to learn about local housing initiatives, community resources, and organizing efforts related to housing and neighborhood development. The event will take place at the UALR Donaghy Student Center, located on the campus of the University of Arkansas at Little Rock in the Ledbetter rooms from 12 to 4 p.m. It's about time Little Rock stops being the city off the way from progress. For additional information, please reach out to us on @UALRYDSA on Instagram.
Medicaid and CHIP offer free or low-cost health coverage for children and teens. Hospital and doctor visits, prescriptions, shots, and more are covered. That's peace of mind for parents if a child is sick or gets injured. And parents may now be eligible for Medicaid too, even if they've applied in the past. Enrollment is always open. Visit insurekidsnow.gov or call 1-877-KIDS-NOW, paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Yes, we coming in hot this morning right here live at KABF 88.3 FM, where we are the voice of the people. You are tuned into Community Voices, where we are always grateful to be in the number with you. We are so glad every time we show up and you are right here with us, waiting on us, trying to get to us. We are grateful for that because we do know for a fact, we are not revision historians. We know for a fact that if it were not for you, we would not be alive today on the air. I think it's 42 years we're going on. It was 42 years. Thank you all so much for joining us. I want to remind you that you are everyone who is listening to the sound of my voice. What we say, church? Everyone under the sound of my voice. You are greeted in the spirit of Sawubona, that spirit of oneness that binds us together by our humanity. And these conversations help us figure out how to bolster that, how to make sure that we support that that bond that we have. What can we do differently? Where can we go differently? Who can we talk to differently so that we can make sure that we are operating in that spirit of oneness? We got Hotep on the line already, wishing you life, prosperity, and health. And Community Voices does center Blackness in the context of the human story. So every human is invited to this story, and the phone lines are open at 501-433-0088. 501-433-0088. You are welcome to call in and add your voice to this conversation. I am rolling solo today. I'm rolling solo. I don't know where Toney is. All I know is he needs y'all to send him some. Whenever he's not in the studio, he needs some good vibrations. He needs some good energy. He needs some good vibes. So y'all send it forth. Send it forth. Let it be so. I do want to say that I did not start with a song, and I'm not going to start with an EJI tidbit because I wanted to reclaim that time, because there are some clips that I'm hoping we have enough time. I'm hoping we have enough time to listen to today, but it's about 4 of them. There are 4 of them. So we may or may not make it to it. It's okay, because I want us to be in on the flow. However the conversation flows, we're going to follow that flow. And so I want to also say this. And so the purpose of the EJI tidbits is to make sure that we do not forget to connect the dots. And so even though we are talking about something that may have happened in the 20s, in the 1920s, in the 1800s, it might have happened in 2010, we can still draw a through line from what we said in the tidbit to where we are right now. So the purpose of the tidbit is to help us connect the dots. I'm not proselytizing for the Equal Justice Initiative. I don't work for them. I don't get any money for them. I'm not trying to get you to, like, you should go. Now, you need to go to the museum if you can, but not because I'm getting paid to say that. And so I can use any source. So wherever I find a connection that I feel like needs to be made, I'm going to use that source. And so it's not, I haven't walked away from the EJI tidbit. The tidbit for today is actually embedded in one of the things that I want you to hear today, this morning. So I want to get us started, tell you how I got here. Oh, wait a minute. Lo says that past is happening today through Trump's policy of erasure. That past is happening today through Trump's policy of erasure. Okay, Hotep, since you want to start there, let me close out what I was about to do and open up something else in response to what you just said. Because I told you we're going to go with the flow. Let's go with the flow. Let's go with the flow. Okay, let's take a listen to this right here for just a minute. That's an ad playing. Hold on, here comes, as soon as this ad is over in 13 seconds.
Tonight, President Trump is escalating his war against what he calls the last remaining segment of woke, accusing the Smithsonian of being out of control, where everything discussed is how horrible our country is, how bad slavery was, how unaccomplished the downtrodden have been. Nothing about success, nothing about brightness, nothing about the future.
We want the museums to talk about the history of our country in a fair manner, not in a woke manner or a racist manner.
A different tone than his first term. He toured the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture.
This museum is a beautiful tribute to so many American heroes.
In May, NBC News found at least 32 artifacts that were once on display at that museum had been removed. That came after the president signed an executive order in March saying the Smithsonian was influenced by a divisive race-centered ideology that portrays American and Western values as inherently harmful and oppressive. Attorney Lindsay Halligan is leading the White House review.
We're just hoping to keep things positive and focus on America's 250th birthday.
The president's comment about slavery drawing backlash.
That someone, says something like that, is downright offensive. And to great extent, I think it's evil.
While among tourists in D.C. today, mixed reactions.
I'm open to every entity undergoing a review.
They're not too woke. They honestly speak the truth about this country's history.
The Smithsonian did not respond to a request for comment. 62% of its funding comes from the federal government.
Okay, here's Lo saying the opposition needs to define the word quote unquote woke and the misuse of the word. The opposition needs to define the word woke in quotation mark, the word woke and the misuse of the word. I doubt very seriously that the opposition is going to define the word because it's propaganda. So they're not going to define it, because if they defined it, then you would say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. So they have to keep up this false narrative in order for their agenda to be accomplished. So I doubt that they do that. I doubt that very seriously. And so I want to say thank you so much to the loyal listener who sent me the video, the NPR interview with Ray Lynn Barnes, who wrote the book Darkology. The book Darkology, D as in David, ARKOLOGY. And so anytime a word ends with the suffix OLOGY, we know that that means the study of. So whatever it is, if it ends with OLOGY, you're studying something. And so in this case, what she wants to do, this doctor, her name is Ray Lynn Barnes, and she's credentialed, of course. I know some people got, tell me the credentials. I'll be like, I'm not interested in the credentials. Okay, but wait a minute. I guess sometimes you need to be. But she is the assistant professor of American Cultural History at Princeton University. She is a fellow at the Hutchins Center for African American Research at Harvard. And she grew up in Orange County, California, where blackface thrived. And so she decided that I don't know what led her here, but she wanted to do a study. She researched blackface. And she wrote this book because she wanted to expose it. She wanted to expose it. She wanted us to learn from it. She wanted us to not try to sanitize and whitewash our history. It is what it is, and we would be better for confronting it and dealing with it than making up false narratives like woke and acting like something is wrong with people who want to tell the whole truth and nothing but. Even though when you go to court, that's what they want you to do. But in the public sphere, in the area of politics, oh no, this is not where we tell the truth. Okay, now, well, how is that? Anyway, so she wrote this book called Darkology, where it is the study of the system of whiteness and the system of white inhumanity, their obsession with blackness, with darkies, because that's one of the words that they used to use to refer to black folks, darkies. So this obsession that they have with the black body and how they use the black body at almost every turn in their lives to make sure that they are able to continue to spread the false narratives like what we hear about the word woke today. They want to continue to spread these false narratives about how we interact, who we are, how race works or does not work, who we work, just all of the nonsense that we are dealing, the shenanigans that we are dealing with. There's an obsession that the system of whiteness and the system of white inhumanity they have. And when they find themselves, it's so interesting to me because in this conversation, this interview she's having with Terry Gross on NPR, when they talk about how blackface started with this man his name is T.D. Rice, Thomas Dartmouth Rice. And he was a failing actor. So his career was headed to the dumps. And he's trying to figure out, how can I revive myself? How can I make a name for myself? How can I put myself on the map? What can I do? And somehow he stumbles along and meets this enslaved black person. I think it was an enslaved African, whose name, I don't know if that was his name, but the enslaved African called himself Crow. So wherever the name came from, that's how he identified himself. So Lowe says Black excellence is the greatest threat to Caucasians. Black excellence is the greatest threat to Caucasians. So here is an example of that. So T.D. Rice, his acting career is failing. He stumbles upon this man named Crow. He's enslaved. Crow is enslaved. But even though he's enslaved and he's differently abled, so he's got a leg that drags and he's got a shoulder that kind of protrudes upward. And so he is differently able. Now, is he differently able because he was born that way? Well, some people might want to argue that, but chances are there were some issues that he was experiencing as an enslaved person that the master did not give attention to. So I would actually suggest that perhaps he was not born that way, but because he did not have access to adequate health care, because there was no one tending his body, there was no one who cared what happened to his life because you were really just there to be exploited for your labor, then that's probably why he ended up as a differently abled person. But nevertheless, Crow is doing the work of his enslaved African, and he's laughing and he's giggling and he is enjoying himself. That doesn't mean he was enjoying the work. That does not mean that he was enjoying being enslaved. That does not mean that he was happy about his life. It means that there's something about the melanin that you find in bodies that gives us a strength that you don't understand. The Bible talks about it when it says that I want you to give me a peace that passes all understanding, that will guard my heart and my mind. And so Crow is out here. I'm not saying nothing about Jesus, but wherever he getting his faith from, it ain't got to be from Jesus. But whatever it is, it's on the inside of him. It's something about melanin that gives you that spirit that says, even in the midst of it all, no matter what I'm going through, I know how to be at peace and guard my heart and my mind so that I don't become the evil that I'm fighting against. And so Crow is just going around being himself. And then T.D. Rice says, he's watching, observing. What word would we use today for that? Surveilling. Everywhere we go, it's always somebody surveilling us. They got the cameras at our grocery stores. They got the cameras in our neighborhoods. They got the cameras everywhere. And they got cameras everywhere, period. But especially for people who are non-white. Y'all just sit up at the desk looking to see what we're doing. So he's being surveilled by T.D. Rice, Crow is. And then T.D. Rice says, this is an interesting character. That's what he says to himself. Well, he says it out loud too. This is an interesting character. And so what he decides to do is embody this character that he finds so interesting. But because he is white and he is failing, and this man who is African, who is melanated, has the audacity to be joyful in this time where Rice in his life cannot find joy. Now he want to be mad about, okay, so I'm going to make fun of you. And so that's what T.D. Rice decides to do. He decides to make fun of Crow for being this differently able person who has the audacity to have a joy, to have a peace that cannot be touched by what else we say? This joy that I have. The world didn't give it to me. World didn't give it. The world can't take. Don't we sing all of that? Lowe says that's why Fred Astaire stole most of the Black Dynamo duo of the Nichols brothers dancing moves. That's why Fred Astaire stole most of the Black Dynamo duo of the Nichols brothers dancing moves. Not only that, but Fred Astaire is also one of the ones who used blackface in his career for entertainment. And so that's what, let me tell you the whole title of the book that Ray Lynn Barnes writes. Darkology, Blackface, and the American Way of Entertainment. Blackface and the American Way of Entertainment. That's the subtitle to this book, Darkology. And so the minstrel shows, that's what we're talking about, blackface. And so T.D. Rice is known as, he's known as the father of minstrelsy. He's the father of blackface. So he decides, okay, I got to make myself black. He takes some wine corks and he burns them up until he can make soot. And he colors his face, his hands, and his feet. Because that's what you're going to see, right? That's the parts that you're going to see. And so he wants to make sure that they come across as black. And then he makes fun of Crow. He gives him the name Jim. So now the character that he develops is named Jim Crow. This is the same name, the same character for which the laws were named after, that happened after Reconstruction, that kept the system of whitenesses and the system of white inhumanities knee on the necks of black folks. And so now Jim Crow becomes this character. Now T.D. Rice is going to go around and he's going to perform this so that he can make a mockery out of Black folks, out of Blackness, out of diasporianism. He wants to make a mockery out of it so that he can perpetuate the false narratives of the stereotypes that Black people are lazy, Black people are unworthy, Black people are not human, Black people are stupid. He wants to make sure that that message continues to be poured out in any way, by any means necessary, because if we can keep people believing that Black people are less than human, that Black people are inferior, that Blackness is something that we do not want to support because it is not human, then it's easier for folks to get in on the conversation and buy into the conversation about denying us our rights. Oh, yeah, it's easy to deny rights to somebody that you don't think is human. And so we want to keep this false narrative in your face. So blackface, the minstrel shows become they become the #1 entertainment industry medium to keep this false narrative alive. And so I want you to take a moment now and listen to one part. This is one part of the conversation between Terry Gross and Ray Lynn Barnes, who is the one who wrote the book Darkology, Blackface and the American Way of Entertainment. Take a listen.
Easily be led to believe that slavery was a grand old party, because that's what it was supposed to be telling you. It's pro-slavery propaganda.
I want to ask you about the Works Progress Administration, the WPA.
Yes.
And this was a very progressive idea to create an administration during the Great Depression that would basically pay laborers, writers, theater companies, and keep them alive during a time when everybody was going broke. You know, it was hard to live, hard to survive. But the WPA also had a branch that was devoted to disseminating music and, you know, to help in theaters. So what role did the WPA play in disseminating minstrel songs to schools?
It is an amazing concept when you think about it, putting millions of Americans to work in terms of architecture, music, dance, etc., painting. It was a segregated organization. And what you're talking about is what I term basically a blackface bailout that happened during the Great Depression. So all of those publishing companies that started in the late 19th century and continued to rise in popularity through the Great Depression were under financial strain. And FDR and the Works Progress Administration, one of their main goals was not just to put people back to work, but to preserve American heritage. And so they felt that it would be critical to not let blackface die. And some of the reasons that they were concerned it was going to die was not just financial, it was also the rise of American radio and cinema. And blackface is critical to the birth of both radio, television, and film. And so what the federal government does is they buy out these 79 publishing houses, and they also create a blackface bureau where you have bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., whose entire job all day long is to evaluate blackface how-to minstrel guides and shows for children and Americans and decide if they're funny, if they're witty, but most importantly, are they patriotic? Do they capture some unique essence about America? And then they would distribute lists recommending the top minstrel plays that they recommended. Yes, to schools, to local charities, to colleges. And so these are rubber stamped by the federal government as the most apt representations of American culture that you should revive locally.
And that included a lot of Stephen Foster songs.
Yes. So what's fascinating is because they purchased up all of the sheet music in these publishing houses, Stephen Foster music and all of this material goes into public domain. And that's the critical key to why it becomes a part of the curriculum. The WPA also had a wing for historians, and they were tasked with coming up with state guides and also state curriculum for every single state and identifying what are the songs, the plays, the paintings that every American should know. And Stephen Foster is the top of that list.
I am wondering if the music appreciation teacher that I had in 5th or 6th grade learned these songs as part of the curriculum when she was growing up.
I can guarantee it.
That was Ray Lynn Barnes, the author of Blackface and the American Way of Entertainment, with Terry Gross from NPR. Terry Gross from NPR on there. It's an interview that they have on Fresh Air. That's the name of Terry Gross's show. And so this is, let me just say a couple of things first. I want to remind us about what we talk about here at Community Voices when I say that this is a show that centers Blackness in the context of the human story. So Ray Lynn Barnes is a non-Black person. However, she is a non-Black person. She's a historian. She is a scholar, but she centers Blackness in her work. That's what led her to write this book, because she understands the need for us to know what happens to humans in our midst. And so for her to use the context, use her art, use her talent, use her gift, use her privilege, use her all of her tools to make sure that this information is disseminated. That's what it means to center Blackness in the context of the human story, and that's from a white person. But there was a Black woman who also did the same thing. She centers Blackness in the context of the human story, because it's not something that white people have to do. It's something that we all have to do. So when Ray Lynn Barnes goes to the Smithsonian, she's looking for material, source material. She wants primary source material for this book that she's writing, meaning she wants to go all the way back to the person who said, don't tell me what the person, don't you tell me what they said. I want to hear from them. I want to read their words that they put in writing that was printed. I want the primary material so I can make sure that I'm getting the real story as I put my work together. And there was a woman, a Black woman, who was working at the Smithsonian, and she was responsible for this section, this department where Ray Lynn Barnes needed, where she had to go to get the source material that she needed. So Ray Lynn Barnes walks in there, it's the Smithsonian. So she already knows that the Smithsonian is the people's library, and basically everything that's ever been printed, you ought to be able to find it in the Smithsonian, which is why Trump targeted it to begin with. But we'll talk about that in a minute. And so she goes in there and she's looking, right now she's not asking any questions. She's a historian, like she knows what to do. So she's looking up her article, missing, can't find it. Looking up another book, missing, can't find it. Everything, every title that she's looking for, she cannot find it. It's not in the record. She's like, wait a minute, what's happening? So she walks up to the Black woman and says, I'm trying to find this material, and all of it says, they say it's not in here. So the Black woman in this moment is going to center Blackness in the context of the human story. So she basically interviews Ray Lynn Barnes for an hour. And she's like, why do you want this material? What are you going to do with it? How are you going to use it? Who are you going to use it for? Who are you going to send it to? And she grilled her. The Black queen grilled her until she was satisfied that Ray Lynn Barnes was going to handle the material with holy hands, with sacred hands. And until then, she was not going to let her have it. The Black queen had taken 70 or 80 books about blackface and minstrelsy, and she had taken them and moved them to where she was one of the only ones who knew where they were. And so when we talk about diversity, we talk about this country, this presidential administration this war that has been waged against DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. The importance of diversity is to make sure that you have someone at the table who has a lived experience that's different from yours, so that when you engage in conversation around that table, you can make sure that you are reflecting the whole of humanity. If you got nothing but white men in the audience, which is what T.D. Rice had when he started these minstrel shows, you ain't got nothing but white men in the audience, well, then That's why you're able to do all this. That's why you're able to make a mockery of Black person. Because I guarantee you that if one of us had been at that play, at that stand, whatever you were, wherever you were, I guarantee you it would not have gone the way that it did. And so the purpose of going against diversity is to make sure that only one voice is heard. So even in when we were talking about when Raylene Barnes was talking about the works progress administration, they were working together with the government to make sure that only one story is heard. So we're going to design the curriculum so that students, as they grow up, they will hear only one story, and that is the story that they will sing. That is the story that they will learn. That is the story that they'll hear on the radio. That is the story that they will see on TV. That is the story that they will read about in the newspaper ads. That is the story that they will read about in during whatever is being printed. All of this is one story being force-fed down their throats so that they can continue to lie about who we are as Americans, and the world that always tries to keep Blackness at the bottom of the caste system. And so I wanted you to hear that particular clip, because sometimes people have a hard time understanding what we mean by institutional racism. Like, what do you mean by, because racism, like all of these, like it's just too much. We don't want to be overwhelmed. I don't want to be overwhelmed. I don't want the conversation to overwhelm you. This was a perfect example of institutionalized racism, because the government sanctioned this work of minstrelsy, this work of blackface, sanctions it. So now the government gives the go-ahead to make sure that this is a story that goes forth. So now media comes in, education is brought in, the artists, musicians are brought in, songwriters are brought in, producers are brought, everybody is now brought in on one accord to use whatever platform they have to push this forward. So even if you say, oh, we did a good job, we got it out of the curriculum, okay, that's hallelujah. But we also, what we're going to do about the radio? And so you have this constant bombardment of this same single story, because every institution that governs your life is now supporting it. And so that's why sometimes we do have to, I'm not going to say it like that. So sometimes we have to be able to say, I understand why you racist. Okay, let me just own this myself. When somebody white tells me, somebody non-black, because brown people do it too, somebody non-black, not a diasporian, says to me, I'm not a racist, I say to them, it's not possible for you not to be a racist. It is not possible, because it is in the air that we breathe. It's in the water that we drink. It's in the food that we eat. It's in the education the curriculum that we learn. You cannot help but be racist because you were brought up that way you were born into it. Here's where the scripture in the Bible becomes real. When, who is that? David. When David got called on the carpet by Nathan the prophet for how he treated Bathsheba and killed her husband and all of those things that he did wrong. And then Nathan shows up and shows him his evil. And then David finally realizes that Nathan is talking to him. And so now he wants to repent. He comes up with Psalm 51. And in Psalm 51, he says, I was shapen in iniquity. So this is what he says, I was born to sin. That's what David said. Now, I don't know why Christians feel like, because David said that's David's story, we feel like we got to make David's story our story. I wasn't born into sin. I was not shapen into iniquity. He feels bad because of what he has done. He knows that the blood is on his hands. So now he is groveling. Now he is confessing. Now he's in search of forgiveness. He all down on his knees, basically crying and snot because he don't want the Lord to turn him away. And so this is what's happening when we say, okay, when you say as a white person, you were born into this sin of racism. So it's no way that you cannot be racist. What you can become is anti-racist. What you can do is show up like Raylene Barnes and say, listen, I get it. Wait a minute, what? I didn't know this. Y'all didn't give my permission to do it. Let me tell you what we're not going to do. I'm going to write this book because I'm not going to be a part of this mess because, yes, I might have been born into it, but I don't have to keep it. Let me see what somebody is saying. Oh, watch out now. Lo said, watch out now. And so the institutions of our world support racism, which is why we have to stand up and live into the spirit of Sawubona. So let's go to this part right here. Let me find, okay, y'all know I'm trying to get it as exact as possible on the part that I want you to hear, but that's difficult to do. So I'm gonna lead you into it just like we did in that last clip. So I need 33. Okay, so I want you to listen to this part. Okay, I'm just gonna start right there. Okay, take a listen.
Felt liked about this is it took children who were incredibly shunned and normally hidden from society and allowed them to go on stage in a way that was celebrated in the 1940s, a way that would horrify us today.
So we've been talking about,
Hold on just a minute.
starts to really, and amateur blackface during the civil rights movement because of Black mothers, and these are largely mothers who were part of a Black migration who moved north from the South, and whose husbands had come back from fighting in World War II, and were really angry that they fought to save Europe, to save America, and they come home and they're still second-class citizens.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us what these mothers did.
So a lot of these mothers, as you say, are part of the Great Migration, and they too served in the war. They were on the home front. They were Black Rosie the Riveters. And these Black mothers and fathers believed in the double victory campaign, which meant freedom abroad and freedom domestically. And they believed that with their whole heart, that they were truly fighting to make America better and the world better. So fast forward to the 1950s, and these families now have baby boomer children. They are experiencing the height of post-war America, and they're trying to buy homes, they're founding businesses. And one of the families that I look at is the Reed family. And so they had served in World War II. Betty Reed was a Black Rosie the Riveter, and all they dreamed about was they owned a Black record store and they wanted to build a home in the Bay Area. And so Betty Reed, who had just integrated this neighborhood, and her son integrated Parkmead Elementary, is horrified to discover that the first thing that her son is supposed to witness is a blackface show put on by the school principal and the PTA. And the show that they're doing is actually one of the shows that was recommended by the WPA, written and created by the WPA, called Weep No More, which is from a Stephen Foster song. And so these Black mothers decide through various means that they need to organize to stop this, because they understand, rightfully so, that the fight against lynching, against desegregation, voting rights, all comes down to an issue of dehumanization. And that is what minstrelsy is. It is a mass dehumanization and caricature of Black life. They work with the NAACP. They bring in lawyers who had just worked in the Nuremberg trials, and they use the newly created universal human rights that very clearly states that part of what it means to be a human and to have rights is to have access to education, but also access to the arts. And these Black mothers argue with the NAACP in courtrooms, in schools, in PTA meetings, that their human rights are being violated, and that because blackface was federally sponsored and a part of the school curriculum, that there was very little difference between these caricatures against Black Americans and the caricatures against Jews in Europe during Weimar Germany.
Okay, so Lo said, oh, I don't know. Let me see if this is Lo. I'm assuming it's you, but it might not be you. Yeah, it's Lo says, the system of white inhumanity hates Black folks, but uses the comforts of today, designed and built by Black folks, ironing board, GPS systems, space and rocket systems, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, so, okay. The system of white inhumanity hates black folks, but uses us, exploits us, yes, for the comforts of today. So they use us to make their lives comfortable. That's what he's saying. Absolutely. And so I wanted to share that, because when we think about, again, I said I had the tidbit that I wanted to play through this, but I see, as I'm listening again and again, I hear tidbits all the way through this, because she's saying, listen, the government has sanctioned the the education department to include this kind of stuff, these kind of shenanigans, this racist rhetoric, this propaganda, this whiteness, propaganda of whiteness. You have it in the school. We want you to put it in the schools. And let's think about what's happening right now. We've got the government sanctioning the banning of books at libraries, the removal of information at museums. Like we started that clip with Trump saying, I want y'all to be fair and positive. Sir, you are the one who's not being fair. And how are we going to be positive in the face of evil? That's not what happens. The scripture says, how am I sing in a foreign land? I'm not doing that. I'm going to fight in this land is what I'm going to do. And so these Black mothers said, let me tell you what you're not going to do. You're not going to have my son up in here looking at no black faces. I'm going to do whatever it takes. And it's not just Black women. Maybe it'll come up in a minute. It's not just Black, but it's people coming together in that spirit of Sawubona, of oneness, where we center Blackness in the context of the human story and says nobody should have to go through this. And whoever I am, I don't care what identities I hold, I stand firm on that nobody should go through this. And so I'm going to fight like hell with you. That's what I'm going to do. And so Lo says, just like Nazi Germany burning books, Nazi Germany burning books. We were just in an election cycle. We got another one coming up in a couple of years. And I have been saying this over and over again, that all roads lead to the ballot box. Because when you fight with your voice, change can happen. Some people right now are leery. They don't really, I ain't really thinking about no politics, or don't nothing happen. But we need to know. And people, when they ask me, why do you think people don't want to vote? And I say to them, some people need to see a win. They need to see that what they did, all of their work, that it made a difference. Once they know that what they're doing has merit and can change things, that can move mountains, then they're more likely to participate. So I don't want to leave the story there with the mothers, the Black mothers saying, hey, come on, NAACP, they were together. We're going to fight this thing together. I don't want to leave it there. I want you to hear what else happens after that. Take a listen.
So how successful were these mothers? Tremendously successful. And by 1970, most of these publishing houses are going under because of the incredible work of Black and white mothers who worked with them. There were a lot of Jewish American mothers who were concerned by this, but also people who were moved by the civil rights movement, who said, I don't want my child performing this, and I don't want to perform this. This is not acceptable.
That is an example of what it means to center Blackness in the context of the human story. That's what it looks like to live in the spirit of Sawubona, the spirit of oneness that binds us together. Because if I'm not free, you ain't free. Ain't nobody free. If one person is not free, nobody is free. But here's so they fought and they won. They were able to get blackface to be so taboo that you did not, because at the very beginning of the interview, Terry Gross says, when people roll the tape, when they roll the tape on you, white folks, and they find you in blackface, yeah, it's gonna go viral. It's not gonna be a good day for you, because that's the work of these Black mothers saying, listen, we coming for this. And we are not going to stop until you realize that this is not something that's going mainstream. This is not something that you're going to expose my children to. And you are not, in the name of anybody, going to make me watch this and endure this. It's not going to happen. And so that they said, this is what we're going to do. So they have that success and they continue to build on that. And so we have to be able to realize that even though it might be hard now, like I was working so hard to get that they called it the abortion amendment, but it was about reproductive justice. And I fought hard. I'm talking about me and Dr. Neal. We was everywhere. We was outside. We were doing it. And they came up with some shenanigans, and we did not get the win. But there are other spaces where we can find the win. And so maybe that wasn't the space, but let's keep on fighting until we find the road that takes us to the success that we are looking for. And that's what they did. They said, come on, NAACP. All of y'all, come on, let's go. This is our road. And that's what they did. And so here now, because I'm running out of time, I want to get I want to get what I was considering the EJI tidbit, but we've already had some tidbits because we've been connecting dots through this whole thing. But I want to get this last clip in because I don't think I'm going to be able to. Oh, I did say it was 4. Oh, my goodness. I'm doing good because I said 4, and I think this is the 4th one. Again, talking about the EJI tidbit is always about connecting the dots. So I want you to listen to this one last clip from Terry Gross and Raylyn Barnes, the author of Darkology, Blackface, and the American Way of Entertainment. I can't get it right on there, so just bear with me. It's gonna ease into it. We're gonna ease into it.
Just sometimes is, like the TMC for a while started having people on like describing why the film was important, yet there's, blackface in it, or what would you like to see?
Oh, wait, that's not right.
Face and has
And
Look, you gonna make me say some stuff that we used to say in the church. Not today, devil. Not today, devil. Let me get to this. Y'all know what this thing doing. Hold on. I'm gonna let you gonna hear this. 33:17 is where I'm trying to go. All right, we're gonna ease into it. Take a listen.
Talking about the history of blackface, especially in amateur groups and fraternal organizations. But at some point, like the KKK starts using them, the Ku Klux Klan.
mm-hmm.
And talk about how the stereotypes, the horrible stereotypes of blackface were used, and all the literature accompanying it were used by the Klan and other, like white supremacist groups.
Yeah, so a hard thing, I think, for us to understand today is for most of the Jim Crow era, the Elks Club, the Rotary Club, any sort of professional organization are the same members and local leaders as the Klan. I think the most troubling thing in modern America in the 1980s, 1990s, and 2000s, one of the ways that white supremacist groups explode and organize is through nationalized print media. So these would be mailing lists or magazines that you would sign up for via subscription. And they're very vocal about how they want to revive the minstrel show. And they keep track very closely of when Stephen Foster lyrics are changed, when the N-word is removed, when Stephen Foster or blackface songs are no longer allowed to be used as state anthems, as college anthems. And they very much see that as an attack, not just on white supremacy, but American culture itself.
You write that the slogan MAGA, Make America Great Again, was a slogan in minstrel shows from the 1930s through the 60s?
Yes, so Make America Great Again, or This is Our Country, or Take Back Our Country, are all slogans and songs that were very common in minstrel shows. And so a lot of minstrel shows reinterpreted slavery in a fantastical way, that the Civil War ended and that in these minstrel shows, there was Black rule and that everything white America held dear was desecrated. And so this Zip character that I'd mentioned, he has different names that he goes by, runs for office, political office, becomes president. He's the first Black president. And the first thing he does is he takes away America's guns. Sound familiar? And so a lot of these terms that are, you could perhaps say, dog whistles in white supremacy are taken line for line from these minstrel shows. And you can track that these songs and these plays are reproduced decade after decade. And so suddenly you have children in the 1950s and the 1960s performing songs and plays and jokes word for word that are actually coming out of antebellum America and these nativist white supremacist ideologies. And so there's a direct through line in this continuation culturally of these jokes and these slogans and these sayings.
And that was your EJI tidbit for today. Connecting the dots. And that's why it's so important for us to have the conversation so that we can make sure that we don't lose sight of what, oh, I want to read this. Oh, let me say this first before I read this. I am just now getting my copy of The Wretched of the Earth by Frantz Fanon. And so I haven't even gotten past the introduction by Cornel West. So hold on, y'all. My elders, I'm trying my best to keep up with y'all. I'm trying to get there. It reminds me of my dad. My dad and I one time were having a conversation, and whatever happened in the conversation, it made me say, I'm grown. And my daddy said, no matter how old you get, you ain't gonna never catch me. So I know that I ain't gonna never catch my elders. I know y'all gonna always know more than I do. I know that. I'm just trying to get as far as I can so that I can be in conversation with you. And so I want to remind us of what Frantz Fanon says in his. This is not Frantz Fanon. This is actually Cornel West, who wrote the introduction to the book. But the introduction is about this work, The Wretched of the Earth. And so this is what Cornel West says. Frantz Fanon will not allow us to begin our discussion with the counter violence of the oppressed, but rather with long-standing and often overlooked terror and trauma of the structural violence and everyday horror shot through the colonial realities for precious, ordinary people. So he says, look, y'all want to talk about how we going to stop them? No, first of all, let's make sure that we understand what's going on. Let's make sure that we start with the reality of what people are living. Let's start with how Black folks are living, with how non-white people are living, how the oppressed are being violated in so many ways, how the terror and the trauma continues to plague our society, to plague our bodies. Let's talk about that first. Let's make sure that we're on the same page about all of this evilness that's happening and the impact that it has on people every single day. Then we can talk about, we can look through that lens of the oppressor and talk about that. But right now we're going to focus on the oppressed and make sure that we get center their needs so that we can always keep them first in the conversation, because that's how we're going to get it done. Let me see. Here's a comment. Lowe says, when the Confederacy stated the South will rise again, believe in their tenacity to accomplish this task. When the Confederacy stated the South will rise again, believe in the tenacity of their statement. Well, I don't know about that, because I do. Now, if anything in what you just said has to do with the lost cause that the system of whiteness and the system of white inhumanity is always fighting, y'all always fighting a lost cause. And you do have now, one thing I can say about y'all do believe what y'all be saying. Y'all do believe it. I mean, y'all believe it for real, but it's a lie. And so you might want the South to rise again, and you might be coming up with all these policies and procedures and all that to make it win. But good, Black, we're going to always have the last word, because we are the Alpha and Omega. And so that's what you have to remember. So this is just something that we're going through right now. But I don't believe no South going to rise again. I don't believe none of it. Now that's what I don't believe. But I do. So if that's what you're talking about, yes, that they are going to fight with everything that they have to make it happen. What it is that they want to happen, yeah, they're absolutely going to stand 10 toes down on that. And so that's what I wanted to talk about today. I want to talk about the fact that all of the things that we're talking about in that this book that Ray Lynn Barnes has written, Darkology, Blackface, and the American Way of Entertainment. It's a call to action for us, beginning at the very beginning of the interview, when the Black woman says, "Listen, this is my domain. This is where I work. And the work that I do is not just about coming in here saying I'm a librarian. The work that I do is about preserving and protecting history at all costs. So even if I do get in trouble because I done pulled all these books from the shelves, I don't make me no never mind. Because I know that part of what I'm doing is making sure that I represent the people, especially my people, to the best of my ability. So whatever context I'm in, which happens to be the library, that's the work I'm going to do. And so the call to action is for all of us. Where are you? Now, I know if I wanted to go find Black people, I know that I could go to the church and find a whole bunch of Black people. I know that. You ain't got to tell me that. My question is, where else can we be found? And so when Bobby Seale, when we listen to Bobby Seale say, you want power, then you need to get into politics because that's the seat of power. So we need to see you in politics. If you want to make sure that the bankers and the economic justice that we deserve, reparations happen, we need to see you in the banking industry. Well, if you want to make sure that environmental justice happens, we need to see you in the places of the EPA. If you want to make sure that we have housing that's accessible and affordable for folks, then you need to be working in the housing department, whatever front it is, where the work has to be done, where we need boots on the ground, where the struggle is real. We need to be able to see you there, and you not being there just to collect a paycheck, not being there just so you can say yes, master, to your boss, but to be there to say, hey, I've been called to this position as nurse, as doctor, as homemaker, as elementary teacher, as whatever, to make sure that I'm doing my part to the best of my ability to make sure that I honor the spirit of Sawubona, and I make sure that everybody else hears the truth. If you don't hear, every Sunday we say our mission statement, and this is what I call it the pastor, but we don't have no pastor. I call it the pastor. And this is she says this every Sunday when we say the mission statement. She says, I'm not asking us to say the mission statement just because it's it's part of our worship experience. I want to remind you that there is at least one place where you know that you are welcome just as you are. I want you to hear that. I want you to, if you don't hear from anybody else, so you are that person in that space. If they don't hear the truth from anywhere else, because the world certainly ain't telling it, but they gonna hear from you. If you come through my line at the grocery store where I am the cashier, you gonna hear some truth. When you show up at the gas station and we standing outside together and we both trying to put the gas in our car, at least I will tell you the truth. Wherever you are, it's a call to action. No matter who you are, no matter what you look like, no matter what identities this world has placed on you. Lo says it like this: get in where you fit in. Because we all have work to do. It's not just the preacher's job. Oh, I should have played that part of the clip. Oh my goodness, I don't have time to play that part. Oh, maybe I can play that later. Oh, shoot. Okay, I don't have time now. But yes, so this is a call to action, asking you to, again, I've been saying this too. I've started saying, I don't know where these sayings come from in my mouth, but I've started saying this too. The Bible will work for you if you work it. So there is a passage. Oh, my brother Derek, the Dr. Derek Donnell. Thank you for joining us. He said, great show. That, what was I saying? We're getting where I was talking about another thing that said the Bible will work if you work it. So there is a verse of scripture that says, examine yourself. Examine yourself in the Lord. So that means you got to take some time to sit down and look at the bad, the good, the ugly, the improvement, the encouragement, everything that you've done, everything that you've gone through, all of the steps that you've taken to get where you are. See what needs to happen. See where you've grown, but always also see where you need to grow. Examine yourself while you over here judging somebody else. Examine yourself in the Lord and see where you can get in so that you can tell the truth to somebody at some point during this day. Thank y'all so much for joining us for Community Voices. We have been live right here at KABF 88.3 FM, where we are the voice of the people. Your girl Lola is already ready with 2 hours of jazz coming at you right after the station identification. And she always starts with the lady. So I'm going to get you started with... I'm just laughing. Her name, Michelle A. When I was growing up, we were like, girl, you know your name, Michelle. But okay, if you say it's Michelle A, it could be Michelle A. But the song says something in my heart. There's something in Denise's heart, my heart, that says, I believe in my people. I love the people. I believe in the spirit of Sawubona. And we going to have the victory before you know it. Take a listen to this, and then you'll hear your girl Lola.
So don't be ready for next Tuesday.